Welcome back, everyone, to Gen Ed. We are so excited to have actually our social media lead from Wave with us here today. Vanessa, would you like to introduce yourself? Give us a little bit about who you are and what the listeners like. We want to get to know you a little bit more.
Perfect. Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Vanessa, a freshman at the University of Toronto in Canada. I'm currently studying classical piano performance, but I'm also interested in media and communication studies, which I guess is how social media and bullet journaling both come into play. So I imagine my future plans would involve some combination of those interests because I think interdisciplinary fields are really cool.
Awesome, awesome. Vanessa, how did you get into social media? Why is that the position that you honed in at Wave?
That's a good question. So building off sort of the media and communication studies part, I think it's really cool how different media can be tailored for different purposes. And it's sort of an area that I've been dabbling in for a little bit longer, having started my own public account a few years back and working with nonprofits. So naturally, I chose a position that I had a little more experience with. And I think it's also a lot of fun because social media is something that so many of us use. And without working on a project like Wave, sometimes we don't realize everything that goes on behind the scenes and how companies are using tactics to make us behave certain ways.
It is super cool with, like, I guess, go on the inside of being in a nonprofit, you really get to see how many people, work together to produce what seems to look like a simple website or, different marketing strategies. It's really interesting, and with your account, at Adagio Lettering, I love Adagio because that brings in, like, your piano musical side, uh along with your little interest and passion for bullet journaling. Just a little side note, when we have our, weekly, PR meetings, in the background of Vanessa, you can hear her, siblings playing the piano, and your brother is, like, amazing at piano, Vanessa.
Well, it's something that I guess we're both interested in, but also I'm very surprised you caught into the adagio part because one of the questions that I get most often is what on earth it means.
Yeah, it means, like, slow, relax.
Sort of,
Uh
yeah.
Yeah, so how did you get started, like, on your Instagram page and, like, into bullet journaling a little bit?
This is a funny story actually because I first made my public account without knowing how Instagram worked. So this was back in I think my freshman year of high school where I had just gotten into social media. Well, actually, I don't know if that counts. I used Google Plus for a few years, but Instagram was totally new for me. And a friend of mine said I should start a studygram. And of course, I had no idea what a studygram was. It's actually like the study or student sort of community on Instagram. But of course, I dove in headfirst anyway because why not? So that's sort of how I started because a lot of the studygrams are posting student-oriented content like notes and, of course, bullet journaling, so I just imitated and went along with that.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at your account the other day, and you have like over 100,000 followers on your Adagio lettering account. That's insane to me. Um, did you ever like when you were starting this page? Did you think that it was going to get that big, or did you hope that it would get that big, or what was kind of your initial intention with starting that Instagram page?
I think at first I didn't have the intention of gaining any sort of following because as an introvert, posting publicly actually terrifies me. So the first while, it would take me like an hour just to hit the post button, and it still scares me, which is a little ironic. So that was definitely not the goal at first, but of course, I'm grateful to have had so much support over the years and because it's been like an opportunity to explore creative passions while sharing it with people.
Yeah, now you're doing a podcast. You're
I know.
you're not so much of an introvert now with over 100 people following your over 100,000 people following your account, and that's just amazing, like, um And it's really helpful when it comes to, Wave and our marketing and social media. Like, the social media, like, our in Wave's Instagram is phenomenal. I love it. It's super colorful, super creative, and I love reading, like, the little blog posts we have. Um, so I guess how did you grow your profile? Was it just, like, one of your posts blew up and it was, like, one hit wonder and more people got following, or were there any tactics that you use, to grow your page?
Oh, yikes. I think this is a tough question. If I had a magic recipe, I would share it. I think it sort of varies depending on things like your niche, your personality, and your goal. But as like an overarching thing, I think it's important that everyone, like all content creators, keep in mind that to be successful, I guess, you do have to provide some sort of value because the viewer will engage with content and like it if they feel that they're benefiting in some way from it. So, whether you achieve that through storytelling, shareable content, relatable content, or other incentives, I think it's key to approach creating content with your audience in mind.
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to jump back a little bit. You had mentioned how, particularly in the beginning and even now, you still sometimes struggle a little bit with posting, with you being an introvert. And I've actually heard that from a lot of different creators. Even like a lot of celebrities say that they really struggle sometimes with doing kind of doing their job, getting up on stage and performing. How did you kind of come to grips with that? How did you overcome that a little bit to be able to build this really incredible social media page?
That's a good question. I think one of the biggest struggles is trying to find that balance where you're still being authentic, but also not feeling like you're I don't know, like, I think to be authentic, you do have to be vulnerable sometimes, and it just becomes scary when you feel like you're being too vulnerable. But I think having a background in piano performance did help because for a field where you're performing for others, you can't always think too much about what others will think of you. Otherwise, I think it sort of defeats the purpose of you pursuing an art form and striving to create your very best. So sort of focusing more on what I do, why I like doing it, as opposed to maybe how other people will take it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is I think with all social media, we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, and that's where we can tend to get caught up in other people's pages rather than focus on what we really want to put out there. And I feel like you truly put yourself out there in what you're posting. And now with waves, it really pays off. With like how you run your team for social media here. And I can tell that you're very organized. I am always in awe of the spreadsheets that are put together. They're all like color coordinated, very organized. And on your Instagram page, all your posts, your handwriting is so pretty. And um, so what is bullet journaling? Like, I know, like, Dan and I, we've never really, like, heard about it before, I think, and so now we're really getting, uh, not an expert, but you have experience with bullet journaling, so what is it?
Well, okay, I feel like I'm teaching a workshop and giving my intro blurb. So here we go. It's like a planner system. So it was devised by a New York designer named Ryder Carroll, and he sort of explains it to be a blank journal housing elements, so such as an index, monthlies, dailies, collections, and a future log. They're all fancy names, but they sort of represent things that you've probably seen before. I think essentially it sort of starts with a blank notebook, a pen, and you. So you can think of it as a DIY planner in a sense. And since it's blank, it gives you free reign as to what you want to include or not include. So I think this flexibility is definitely an advantage over a pre-printed planner where you're sort of limited.
Yeah, so I'm going to be 100% honest. Not only have I not, burnt bullet journaled before, but I'm not a very organized person overall. Um, So I'm wondering if I wanted to say get into bullet journaling, if I wanted to start working to become more organized, what would you have me do to start getting into it, to start getting into the groove and have it start impacting my life in a beneficial
To start, I'm not sure I'm the most qualified person for this because I can't say I'm totally organized. But
manner?
I think part of it is being able to lay out long-term goals and tasks because I think as students, it's so easy to get caught up in day-to-day things where you're barely holding on for every day and working towards deadlines for the next day. And so I think one of the keys to being a little more organized is to be able to think long term so that you're not always chasing something.
That's a really good piece of advice because I have my, own little planner, but it's, like, one of the pre-made ones, and I just check my boxes off for the day, and then at the end, I'm just, like, waiting for some satisfaction or future goals. So, I guess I'm gonna sidetrack a little bit. How do you come up with your long-term goals, and how do you present that in your bullet journal as, like, a reminder of what you're striving towards?
Ooh, okay. Oops, I just kicked something. I think personally for long-term goals, so for example, when I was applying for universities, I created a spread being like a series of pages in my bullet journal dedicated only to that purpose, and it was like a 4-month overview. So having um, individual pages for separate purposes made it so much easier for me to know what I was supposed to be focusing on and other things like habit trackers, for example, it can help you implement daily consistent things that you should be doing that maybe aim towards a larger goal in the future. And you can also implement this into your bullet journal, for example, by um, putting different sections in your weeklies or your monthlies. So, for example, instead of just having a calendar for your monthly, maybe you would have a section for monthly focus or three big things that you're really trying to get done throughout that month. So that every time you turn back to your monthly page, you realize, well, you're hit with the reminder that you wrote in your own handwriting of what you were supposed to be doing that month, and it sort of just reorients you in a way.
I think that can be really helpful. I like how you said right there that you see what you're supposed to do in your own handwriting, which I feel like um, is very much something that you have to come to grips with. Like when you're looking back through and you see that you wrote that down, and you're like, oh, fetch, I got to do
For
this.
sure. And I feel like
Um,
you oh, sorry, keep going.
no, you go ahead.
Oh, I meant to say, I think you're held a lot more accountable when you write things by hand for some reason, because it feels more personal than if you were to type it up. And so whenever I write something down, and if I were to postpone a task or event too many times, you start feeling really guilty. And I don't get that same feeling from typing. So
So there you go. Start writing stuff down to make yourself feel more guilty. That's what I've learned here today. Um, I'm wondering, Vanessa, you'd mentioned how you used kind of this bullet journaling a little bit as you're preparing um, for college and preparing to apply. How have you used bullet journaling? I guess let me step back a little bit and ask you, how long have you been using bullet journaling, and how has it helped you over the past few years as you've kind of tried to strive towards your personal goals?
I think my purpose for bullet journaling has shifted a little over the years. So I first started in 2016. I think that's 5-ish years ago. And back then, it was more of my central planning tool because there wasn't as much going on. So I was able to use my bullet journal for probably 95% of my planning. So everything would be in that notebook, whether it was day to day thoughts, ideas, or a weekly plan for something a little more long term. And then over the years, it changed a little. So, especially entering university, I don't keep my planning in there as often. It's become more of a creative outlet, somewhere to, because the process is really therapeutic. You're writing things, setting things up in a way that works for you, especially because I'm a visual thinker. So, being able to lay out ideas um, in the way I see it in my mind has been so helpful. So, I think it serves as both a functional productivity tool if you make it to be something like that, Or if you want to take more of the visual route, it can be a creative outlet. And in terms of personal goals, I think in high school for a while, I was really devoted to my habit tracker. I wish I could show you what it looks like, but this is audio only, so I will verbally describe. It's like a grid of your habits going down the y-axis and the days of the month going along the x-axis. So you have a bunch of grids, and every day you would color in a grid that corresponds with the date if that habit was present. And it's satisfying because, of course, you want a fully colored grid without white spaces. And so that really helped me with consistency during high school, whether that was studying for a certain amount of time every day, getting enough sleep every day, drinking enough water, that sort of thing. So I think it integrated really well with mindfulness and building healthy habits, which I can't say I've kept up, but it worked for a while.
Yeah, I think I'm not the most creative person, like, with especially with, like, drawing or doodling, and I like to have everything written down because I feel like on the computer, even if you have your calendar popped up, it's not it's not personal, like you said, Vanessa. It's very, I don't know, like, businesslike, like, you
Oh,
gotta
yeah.
just get it off your chest, and I feel there's also, mood trackers similar to what you were mentioning with that graph, and, like, each day you track if you were happy, if you were stressed, if you were, like, angry, you know? And I started doing that, and it's really cool to, like, go back a few months and then see how you were and all the progress that you made, um
That's
but
amazing.
I think, a little bit of a problem I have is when I don't, um, like, get all my to-dos checked off, or I break a habit, then I get down on myself, like, "Man, I should've, like, drank more water," or, "Man, I should have gotten out of bed early so I could, like, get some exercise." So how do you deal with, like, the dissatisfaction or and to try to maintain, like, that mindfulness and happiness, like, going forward with your plans?
I think on the topic of the mood tracker, I used one for a while and I really liked it too because it's sort of like a time capsule and you can look back and spot trends and everything. My only issue was that you can't really feel only one mood in a day, so that made it a little bit challenging. In terms of feeling that satisfaction, I think part of it is also remembering that you're defined by so much more than like numbers, statistics, and everything. So while it feels great to get everything done, I think it's also important to recognize that sometimes at your very best state, like you're doing everything you can, and there's still things you can't do, and that's totally normal and totally okay.
You were talking about earlier with the graphs and the um, and even just writing stuff down as opposed to typing. There are a lot of ways to kind of psychologically motivate yourself to do better for whatever reason that physically putting a check mark next to some task just releases all of those endorphins in the brain. I don't know what it is about it, but um but I totally agree with that it's these are very useful tools to motivate yourself, and I don't know exactly all the psychology behind why they work, but it is also really important to not, I guess, wrap yourself too much up in that. Whereas putting a check next to a task can send a flood of endorphins, also not being able to check off a task can send in a lot of negative emotion. And I think it's just really important to be able to motivate yourself through these ways, but also know when to draw the line, and know when you've done the best that you can. And um, and I'm not sure if you have any advice on that, but it it feels like a fine line sometimes, I guess.
It does. I think one piece of advice I have is to celebrate little wins because they're motivating and you worked hard for them, so you deserve your satisfaction, I suppose. This might sound cheesy, but sometimes I write notes to myself in my bullet journal because it's not only a planner, it's also sometimes I use it for thoughts, sort of like a diary. And if you write yourself a motivational message or two, or maybe congratulate yourself on something you're particularly proud of, that feels pretty good. And
Yeah.
also, I've heard from other people that when they set up a page in a way that looks visually appealing to them, it's more motivating for them to actually look at their planner and use it. I personally don't know if this applies to me, but in case it works for someone else.
That's
Yeah,
actually really interesting. Real quick, just like making it look better so you want to like look at it. You're like proud of your journal and so you look at it more and you get more stuff done. That's a funny idea to me. See, I love all these little ways to just, motivate yourself to to do stuff more, to trick yourself into doing things.
Oh, yes.
it's pretty, so you like looking at pretty things, so then you wanna do like, you wanna get them done. Uh, I like, especially now, it's currently May, so, and it's AP season, it's final season, and I think it's been rough on everyone, and so, like, with bullet journaling, um, it has that, like, routine aspect. Do you have any tips, of including or, like, how to add time into our schedule to carve out time for studying or, any, like, study tips you have?
Study tips. Time blocking has really helped me. I've found that when I have to assign times to everything, it suddenly feels like you have so much more time than you thought you did because when you lay everything out on a calendar, there's a lot more space, assuming you don't waste time in between. So that's something that I've been using for the past 5 or 6 years, either on paper through my bullet journal or digitally. And I think it just makes you feel less overwhelmed because you're more aware of all the things you could get done throughout the day if you don't, spend all your time scrolling through Instagram because all of that time adds up. So time blocking is one.
Could you
Something.
explain
Oh,
really
sorry.
quick what, time blocking is?
Yeah, it's like, for example, if I was on Google Calendar, I would set up different chunks of time, for example, 9 to 11, 11 to 30, and assign tasks for that time. So it's a little bit like a schedule, and gradually you do get better at estimating how much time things actually do end up taking. So I guess in a way you would plan out your day ahead of time.
Yeah, I do something kind of similar to that, except for way less organized. Where I block out times just like in my mind, where I'm just like, okay, from here to there, I need to be doing this. From then to then, I'm going to be doing this, and that's very hit or miss for me. I think just because it's so non concrete. I just put it in my mind, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this, but um, I feel like this is where I could really use some help with just writing stuff down, making it more concrete as we've been talking about to just remind yourself that you need to be doing stuff. But I was wondering, um, you're talking about study routines um, and as Alana said, it's AP season, and we people just finished up college applications, and it's finals. What do you do when like everything becomes really jam packed? I guess like when it's finals season and you just have so much to do, or when you're really on a crunch, to get some stuff done. What do you do to motivate yourself to make sure that you have enough time to be able to crank through all the stuff you need to get done?
That sounds like, unfortunately, a relatable situation. I just finished up my finals, so I think what helped me get through this period of crunch time, as you said, was just putting my phone in a different room. So sometimes I would keep it like if I was on the top floor of my house, I might keep it in the basement so I have no motivation whatsoever to pick it up because that's honestly my biggest distraction. Shutting it down, putting my phone on airplane mode has also helped me. As I mentioned, time blocking, especially when you do it early in the day, it gives you an idea of everything you could get done from morning to evening. And the other thing is, I think, prioritizing. So, for example, um, as a music major, I do need to practice as well as study. So, um, I have a habit of putting off practice until the late evening hours, which of course doesn't work. So to make sure that everything was done, I would force myself to finish practicing and I wouldn't be allowed to study until I finished practicing, which sort of helped me get through both things. And also the other thing I think is breaking down your tasks into smaller sections. So if you have a massive project and it's overwhelming, intimidating, and you just don't want to start it, breaking it down into things like maybe your essay outline and then first essay draft, and then being able to tick off all these small tasks, it shows that maybe the assignment isn't as complex as you might think it is, and maybe it actually takes less time, and that's always a good feeling, and you won't end up feeling as stressed.
I have the issue with procrastination. I'm really bad at it. So I had like a paper due today and I did it all day yesterday. Like that's all I did. And it was awful. Like, so how do you find the motivation to like actually set a task and do it and not do it the day before it's due?
I do the same thing sometimes. But what helps me, I think there's a strategy. I forgot what the name of the strategy is, but you set a timer for 15 minutes and you tell yourself to sit down and do that one task that you should be working on for 15 minutes. And 99% of the time, by the time you've done 15 minutes of the work, you won't want to stop because you've gotten into the flow of things. I think getting started is just the hardest. Or, hop on a study call with a friend online. I think that's helped me so much. Even though we're always muted and it's a silent study call where we're just staring at our own papers, it helps so much because you feel like you're in an environment that's productive, supportive, and you feel guilty if you're not working. So I think that's worked for me as well.
I think that just jumping into it tip of setting a timer for 15 minutes and going in is brilliant. Like I think of so many different things where it's really just you're sitting there. I can picture myself just sitting in my bed knowing that I have like a paper due and being like, I just really don't want to start this. Um, but the minute you commit to it and the minute that you're just like, I'm going to go out and do this, it suddenly you're committed. It's like it's like going skydiving. Once you jump out of the plane, you're out of the plane. um, and so I think that's such a useful tip. It's something that I've never like kind of what's the right word? Kind of cognitively done or been consciously done where I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna sit down for 10 minutes and hopefully after that 10 minutes I'll be like kind of in the process of things. But I think that's such a cool idea. Because it's so much easier to commit to 15 minutes and then keep going than it is to commit to like 2 hours, or whatever. Um, just another little Jedi mind trick. I love it.
And it's so empowering too because you realize that it really wasn't so difficult to get started.
Yeah, you can just start. All it takes is you opening up your computer and starting to type stuff, or sitting down at the piano, or whatever it may be. Um,
I also
and you
oh.
just gotta grease those wheels a little bit and get it going. Go ahead, Alana.
Yeah. I also like the accountability aspect of it, having one of your friends or someone actually there with you. I saw on I forgot where. It was like a video and they actually like time lapse themselves like working. And I have to admit, like I haven't done it, but some of my friends have, and it's really cool to see. I think just having like a camera there watching and then you can go back and look. Uh that's really cool to me. But Vanessa, since this podcast is coming to an end a little bit, is there any last pieces of wisdom you have to give or anything you want to say?
Wisdom. I'm not sure if I'm qualified for this, but
Oh, you're very
um,
qualified.
Yes.
I think with exam season and university decision season, everything during this time, it's so important not to, um, I guess, have these experiences define you because they feel like they're so important and they might alter the course of your life. But I think in the long term, these are just small stepping stones, and it's important to remember that there's always something exciting down the road waiting for you, and that any setbacks are only temporary, and you can always rebound from them.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Vanessa, again for agreeing to come on today, for talking to us about, bullet journaling, organization, and I'm basically set up to become an Instagram influencer now. So that's cool. Um, we've Right before we drop off, we've got a quick little plug, an exciting announcement that Wave is actually doing a free summer camp kind of situation this summer, that you can go to Wave's website and sign up for, get on the wait list as soon as possible. It's going to be super fun. Like I said, it's free. And as we said earlier, just jump in, just if you're scared about doing something or learning something, just jump right into it. Go commit to it right now. It'll be like you're jumping out of an airplane. It's all okay. um, Thank you again, Vanessa, for being on today, and we'll see you guys all next week.